The revolving restaurant at the top of Crystal Bay Hotel was booked out tonight. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline like a living painting. Neon signs in the distance. Streams of headlights cutting through the streets below. In the center of the dining room stood a long table draped in champagne-colored velvet, scattered with white roses and pink hydrangeas. Grace liked hydrangeas. She said they reminded her of completeness. I arrived 2 hours early to check every detail myself. The lighting was dimmed to her favorite warm amber. The music was that jazz track she occasionally looped in her car. The napkins were folded into rose shapes she'd once paused on in a magazine spread. The appetizer the waiter brought out was foie gras mousse with fig jam. She'd reposted a Michelin 3-star dish last month. And I'd been one of the likes. She would never know how much I did. She didn't need to. In her eyes, I was just Ethan. A 24/7 ATM, an errand boy. Always available. Always docile. Always smiling. AT7 sharp. She arrived. Grace Song walked in wearing an emerald velvet gown. And for a moment, the entire room seemed to gather its light around her. Tall and striking, with sharp, refined features. Her phoenix eyes carried 3 parts pride and 3 parts coldness, like a diamond-studded blade cutting through a crowd. Behind her trailed 4 girlfriends, chattering and laughing. 2 of them were filming vlogs on their phones, spinning the camera in a full circle around her. Wow, Grace, your boyfriend is so romantic. He booked the whole revolving restaurant. How much did this cost? Grace smiled. A faint one. Her lips curved in an extremely restrained arc like she was granting the world a sliver of goodwill. She clicked toward me in her stilettos and looked me up and down. I'd changed into a new suit. Fresh haircut. A bouquet of white roses in my hands. You actually look decent tonight, she said. These are for you. I handed her the flowers. She took them and casually passed them to one of her friends, then looped her arm through mine and leaned in. Voice low. Tonight's my night. Do not embarrass me like last time. When we toast, actually say something. Don't just stand there like a mute. Got it, I said. The smile stayed on my face as I guided her to the head of the table and pulled out her chair. She sat down without a word of thanks. Already turning to her friends to discuss a new med spa that had just opened, the champagne came. Bubbles streamed up the flutes. Grace sat beside me, chatting animatedly, laughing with her friends. Occasionally she'd turn and flash me a smile, the professional kind. Practiced for cameras. 8 teeth. Eyes crinkling slightly. I knew the difference. When she truly smiled, her left eye creased into a faint, delicate line. Tonight, her eyes were bright, but that was just the lights reflecting. I waited. Dessert came and went. Then the main lights dimmed, leaving a single spotlight on the center of the table. A waiter wheeled in a small silver cart bearing a velvet box the size of a palm. Gasps rippled through the room. Grace's friends grabbed each other's arms, squealing. Someone was already crying. Grace blinked, turning to look at me. And for the first time, something real flickered in her eyes. Surprised that I rose from my chair, walked around to her side, and dropped to one knee. The velvet box clicked open, and even Grace couldn't suppress a sharp intake of breath. The diamond ring had been custom-ordered 6 months ago. A 2.5-carat center stone, flawless cut, catching the spotlight and scattering light like crushed ice. Inside the band, I'd engraved our initials. G.E. Grace. My voice came out hoarse. I couldn't tell if the rasp was staged or real. We've been together for 2 years. From the first day I saw you, I knew that if I could ever marry you, I'd be the luckiest man alive. I know I haven't been perfect. I've let you down in a lot of ways. But I'll change. I'll keep changing until I get it right. Give me a chance. Let me take care of you from now on. The room went silent except for the jazz track swelling toward its climax. Grace studied me. Her expression flickered through hesitation, calculation, and something I couldn't quite name. Then she extended her hand. Get up, she said. The floor's cold. I slid the ring onto her finger. Perfect fit. I'd measured it 6 months ago while she was asleep, but she'd kicked off the covers during a nightmare. And I'd used a red string to trace her finger while tucking her back in. Her friends erupted. Champagne corks popped. Someone threw petals. White rose petals that landed on my shoulders. I stood and pulled her into a hug. Her body was stiff in my arms. Her chin rested on my shoulder, lips brushing my ear with 2 words. Not bad. Then she pushed me away and waved her ringed hand at her friends, beaming like a flower. Look, look. How does it look? Amazing. Grace, your boyfriend went all out. That must be. What point 15? 20 grand. 22. Grace said casually, wiggling her fingers. Custom, Another round of screams. I stood to the side, smiling. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and glanced down. An encrypted message from an overseas account. Series C funding confirmed. Ready to launch at any time. I pocketed the phone and poured Grace another glass of champagne. The party lasted until 10. The guests trickled out. The girlfriends left. Finally, it was just Grace and me, sitting at the long table surrounded by scattered remnants of the night. She leaned back in her chair, eyes closed, absently twisting the new ring on her finger, tired. I asked, "Let me take you home." I gathered her coat and bag and helped her up. She swayed slightly, at least 3 glasses of champagne. I half carried her to the underground garage, opened the passenger door, and leaned in to buckle her seatbelt. Her eyes were closed, lashes long and dark against her cheeks. For a moment, I remembered the first time I saw her at the company annual gala, standing on stage in a red dress, delivering a year-end presentation. Her voice crisp, her eyes bright. Back then, I really thought I'd found the one. Halfway home, Grace's phone rang. She fumbled for it, glanced at the screen, then swiped to answer immediately. I kept my eyes on the road, but my peripheral vision caught her lips curving upward, that curved at the kind that creased her left eye. She typed the whole way. When we reached her apartment building, she unbuckled and swung out of the car in one motion. I got out too, offering to walk her up. Don't bother, she said without looking back. I stood by the car, watching her heels click into the lobby. The elevator doors closed on her, and in that last second, she was looking down at her phone. I got back in the driver's seat, but didn't start the engine. I sat there, hands on the wheel, staring at the dark concrete wall ahead. Then I pulled out my phone and opened an app one rarely used, a little tool that detected network-connected devices through shared Wi-Fi. I'd set up Grace's apartment network for her. Her phone, tablet, laptop were all in my device list. I opened the screen mirroring for her phone. On the screen was a WhatsApp chat. The contact had one name, Ivy. The latest message was from Grace. Sent just now. That idiot proposed tonight. So annoying. The ring's pricey though. Shame to toss it. Guess I'll wear it for now. The reply came instantly. Baby, don't be mad. I'll take you to the Maldives next week. Getaway. You performed so well. Reward time. Grace sent a string of kissy emojis. Then a selfie of her ring. Caption, looks good. He got lucky. Ivy replied, gorgeous. My girl looks good in anything. Soon. Once the song group thing is settled, you can ditch this loser. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. I closed the app and tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. Leaning back, I looked up through the sunroof at a sliver of night sky. Too bright with city lights to see any stars. 2 years ago, when I first saw Grace, she was on stage presenting a marketing plan. After she finished, I raised my hand with a question about her data model. She looked at me and said, smiling, Mr. Ethan has excellent professional insight. That's when I remembered her. Not because she was beautiful. But because she smiled. Her eyes curved into crescent moons, and the fine lines at their corners trembled with warmth. I thought that smile was for me. Then I started pursuing her. Breakfasts, flowers, bags, necklaces. She was cold at first, barely lifting an eyebrow when she accepted gifts. But 3 months in, she suddenly softened and said she'd give it a try. I was so happy I bounced around my rental apartment 3 times and almost hit the ceiling. Now I knew. She'd softened the very week the song group's cash flow first hit trouble. The Song family needed a fool to stabilize their public image. They needed a simp to bankroll Grace's lifestyle. And I was the perfect candidate. I turned the engine over and pulled out of the garage. Night wind poured through the open window, cool against my face. I dialed a number. It rang twice before a woman's voice picked up. Mr. Ethan. Her English was fluent, with a slight accent. All funds are in place. Are you ready on your end? Ready, I said. Launch Wednesday. I'll send all the documents by then. Good. She paused. By the way, there's something you should know. The Cole Group, Ivy Cole, has been accelerating contact with Song's core suppliers. She plans to cut off the Song supply chain before we make our move. That way, Song holdings will fall faster, and the Cole acquisition will be cheaper. Ivy's not the issue, I said. Let her cut. The harder she pushes, the messier the Song Group becomes. The cheaper we pick it up. The woman laughed. Mr. Ethan, are you really the same programmer I met 2 years ago? 2 years ago, I was a programmer, I said. Now I'm the buyer. See you next week. I hung up and rolled the window all the way down. Wind rushed in, billowing my shirt. I drove across the bridge, the dark river below reflecting the scattered lights of the city in broken, rippling fragments. Grace Song would never imagine the idiot she mocked held all the cards, and I knew something else. That $22,000 ring on her finger, the money came from a patent I'd sold earlier this year. The patent her father, George Song, had stolen from my father 20 years ago. To my father's name was Henry Chun. 20 years ago, he was George Song's partner and one of the original founders of Song Technology. George used a forged equity transfer agreement to push my father out. I was 6 when my father and I moved out of the villa. He held my hand walking through the alley to our rental apartment, and his hand never stopped trembling. On his deathbed, he handed me a folder containing only a yellowed piece of paper and a key. The paper was a copy of the original partnership agreement, with a blurred signature in the corner, George Song's, beside it. My father had written in pencil, Ethan. Remember, what doesn't belong to him, someone will take back. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. 28 years old, thin face, a pair of wire-rimmed glasses. I looked gentle, introverted, even a little pathetic. That was me. But it was also what Grace wanted to see. Next week, she'd see a different version. I pressed the gas and drove deeper into the night. At T6 the next morning, my alarm went off. I sat up from the couch. I'd stayed in the car until after 2, then stumbled upstairs without turning on the lights. The apartment was a 1-bedroom rental, $900 a month. 3 blocks from Grace's luxury condo she'd visited once. Stood at the door for less than 3 minutes and said, "It's too small. I can't breathe." She never came back. I showered and put on the plainest white shirt and gray trousers. I checked myself in the mirror. Black-rimmed glasses, neat but shapeless hair, a warm, harmless smile pasted on. Perfect. The standard obedient boyfriend configuration. I went to the old kanji place across town first. Her favorite, preserved egg and lean pork, plus shrimp dumplings. Then detoured to Starbucks for an oat latte. She couldn't drink coffee on an empty stomach. She needed kanji first. A rule I'd learned over 2 years. I dropped everything at her apartment door at 7.40. She usually left at 7.50. The temperature would be just right. Then I went to work. I was a data analyst at a mid-sized tech company. 0.9 to 6. About $3.200 a month. The paycheck card was linked to her Alipay. She'd swipe at least $2.500 from me each month, sometimes for bags, shoes, skincare. More often it was, "Can you transfer $100 to Ivy?" I forgot my wallet. I never asked who Ivy was. Nothing much happened at the office that day. I took leave at 2 p.m. and drove to an unremarkable building in the eastern part of the city. The sign outside read Dingxin Consulting. Looked like a small, average consulting firm. But inside the office at the end of the 12th floor hall, the setup was different. Floor-to-ceiling screens on 3 walls streamed data and charts in real time. Vivian Sue sat behind the desk in a sharp black blazer, hair twisted into a neat bun, frameless glasses perched on her nose. She glanced up when I walked in, gestured for me to wait, and finished a few sentences into her headset before hanging up. "You're here." She stood and handed me a cup of pour-over coffee. The group confirmed it. Acquisition fund. $120 million. Wired in 3 tranches. First installment hits Wednesday. Legal structure. In place. VE framework. Offshore holding. Domestic entity via nominee shareholding. George Song won't be able to trace the source. Vivian flipped open a stack of documents. But I need to be clear with you. The Song Group's books look decent on the surface, but their actual debt-to-equity ratio is over 90%. You're stepping into a disaster. I know. I sat across from her, took off my glasses, and rubbed the bridge of my nose. That's exactly what I want. When they default publicly, I move in for liquidation. The core assets. Tech team, patent portfolio, supply chain. I'll strip them out and restructure at rock-bottom prices. The debt stays on George Song's name. Vivian studied me for a moment. "Ethan, sometimes I wondered that you're a tech guy. Where did you learn financial maneuvering like this?" "From my father," I said. "He started teaching me the day he got pushed out of Song Group. He just didn't live long enough to use it himself." Vivian was quiet. Then she pulled an envelope from her drawer and slid it across the desk. "What you asked for. Ivy Cole's operational details." I opened it. Inside was a detailed timeline that every supplier Ivy had contacted over the past 2 months, what she'd offered, and the terms she'd proposed. The Cole Group had been Song's rival for years. Ivy, the Cole family's only daughter, had spent the last 2 years canvassing connections, planning to swallow Song Holdings whole at its weakest moment. What she hadn't counted on was a third party waiting in the wings. That I flipped through the materials and stopped at the last page. It was an event schedule. Next Friday night, the city's most exclusive private club, Moonview Manor. Ivy Cole was hosting a cocktail reception, and Grace Song's name was third on the guest list. That I closed the folder and asked Vivian, "Can I get an invitation to this event?" Vivian raised an eyebrow. "You want to go? In what capacity?" Grace's fiancé, or Dingxin Consulting's tech advisor. I smiled. Either way, she won't care. Vivian considered it. "Fine, I'll arrange it. But you'd better think this through. Ivy will be there. Grace will be there. What if they? I already know what they are," I said. I drained my coffee, stood, and straightened my cuffs. 2 years. Vivian. I've held out this long not because I'm patient. Because I was waiting for a stage big enough. As I walked out, Vivian called after me. "Ethan, don't hold it in too tight." I waved without looking back. The next few days were no different from any other. Wednesday morning, congee and coffee delivery. Wednesday night, Grace texted me to pick up a bag she'd ordered at some boutique. I went. The salesgirl looked at me with something like pity. She'd clearly realized I wasn't on the way. From the west side to the east, through rush hour, 90 minutes of traffic. I took a photo of the bag and sent it to her. "Got it. Bringing it over." She replied, "Leave it at my office front desk." "I'm working late." I typed back okay and stared at the chat history. Green bubbles from me. All questions. Did you eat? Dress warm? Want to see that new movie this weekend? Her replies were always the shortest possible. K. Fine. No. Later. Occasionally longer. Usually a demand. Transfer $200 to Ivy. Buy me La Mer skincare. Ethan, how much cash do you have? Lend me some. Pay you back in a couple days. She never did. I locked my phone, drove to her office, left the bag at the front desk, and went home. At 10 p.m. I opened the tool again and mirrored her screen. She was on a video call with Ivy. Grace sat in bed in her pajamas, hair loose, laughing. Ivy said something, and Grace playfully called her annoying, then leaned close to the screen and kissed it. I watched for about 30 seconds, then closed the app, a tug at my chest. Like reopening an old wound. 2 years of conditioning. But it didn't hurt as much as before. Before, I'd agonize, pace, ask myself what I was doing wrong. Now I just watched and recorded. Documentation was its own weapon. Friday came. The Moonview Manor invitation arrived via Vivian's courier. A pale gold card embossed with the Cole Group logo, with a small line reading "Ms. Ivy Cole requests the pleasure of your company." I wore the plainest gray suit I owned and walked into the reception. The ballroom was grand. Central champagne tower, cold buffet, a grand piano in the corner playing Chopin. The faces were familiar from the city's business circles. Ivy Cole moved through the crowd in a burgundy backless gown, bare legs flashing through the slit like a living flame. Grace was seated near the window on a velvet sofa, champagne in hand, legs crossed, chatting with someone beside her. The seat next to her was conspicuously empty, and sure enough, after Ivy finished working the room, she walked straight over and sat down beside Grace. Her hand landed casually on Grace's knee, and she leaned in to whisper something. Grace laughed. The angle was cleared at the fine lines at her left. I crinkled. A smile I'd never earned. Ivy's hand slid up 2 inches along Grace's thigh. Grace didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned back slightly, touching noses with Ivy as they murmured to each other. Nearby guests either pretended not to see or whispered among themselves. I stood behind a pillar, a glass in my hand, watching in silence. Then Grace's gaze swept across the room and landed on me. Her expression was a masterpiece. First confusion, then a frown. Like she'd spotted a stray dog at a formal dinner. She said something to Ivy, who followed her gaze and curled her lips in amusement. Grace stood and walked over. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was low, clipped. "Who invited you? My company has a partnership with Dingxin Consulting." I held up my invitation card. "They gave me one." She snatched it, glanced at it, and her expression eased, but her tone stayed sharp. "Fine. Stay out of the way. Don't wander. Don't talk to anyone important. There are people here who matter more than my father's network. Don't embarrass me." "Okay," I said. She turned back, exchanging a look with Ivy. Ivy raised an eyebrow. Grace gave a tiny shrug. "Ignore him." I stood there and drained my champagne in one swallow. Tonight, I'd stay quiet, stay invisible, but I memorized every face, every word, every detail. Most of the suppliers the song group needed most were here tonight. Ivy was hunting, and I was about to flip the board when the reception ended. I waited in the parking lot, I saw Grace get into Ivy's white Porsche. The window rolled down a crack, and Grace's laughter drifted out over a jazz melody. Scattering into the night wind that I didn't chase, I opened my car door and slid inside. I dialed a number. Vivian. Check the Cole Group's recent cash flow. I suspect some of their acquisition funds are coming through off-balance sheet channels. You think the Cole family has a liquidity problem too? Ivy's rushing to buy Song Holdings, even moving before we do. That means she's in more of a hurry than we are. I started the engine and watched the Porsche's taillights disappear into the distance. If she's got holes on her funding side too, then we're not picking up just Song's mess. Vivian was silent for 2 seconds. Then she laughed. Ethan, you're really... What? Looking less and less like a simp. I hung up, the corner of my mouth twitching. The car merged into the evening traffic, and I watched the endless string of red taillights ahead. My mind was still. Soon. When I showed my hand, Grace would realize she'd lost far more than a simp. After the reception, Grace grew noticeably colder toward me. Not because I'd shown up somewhere I shouldn't have, because she thought I had no sense of occasion. That night, Ivy had asked her privately, "Your fiancé seems a little off." When Grace got home, she reamed me out on WhatsApp. "Can you stop humiliating me? Do you know who Ivy is? You stood there like a security guard. You made me look cheap." I replied, "Sorry. Won't happen again." She didn't respond. After work that day, I stayed at my desk 2 extra hours. My colleagues had all left. Most of the lights were off except the one above me. On my screen was a data backup I'd quietly pulled from the Song Group's internal network. Rows of financial numbers. Every row told the same story. The Song Group looked glossy on paper, but core operations had been losing money for 13 straight months. George Song was borrowing frantically to plug holes. Almost all his personal assets were pledged as collateral. The only thing not mortgaged was Grace's apartment, bought under her mother's name, transferred 3 times to make it hers. Probably George's last firewall. I captured a few key screenshots and sent Vivian a message. Is George Song's debt list ready? Tomorrow. I shut down my computer and walked out. The sky was dark, autumn chill in the air. Ginkgo leaves along the street were beginning to yellow. I passed every landmark at the restaurant where I'd taken Grace, the trash can where she'd thrown away the chestnuts I'd peeled for her, the cafe where she'd first said yes to being my girlfriend. Every place felt like a nail driven into the road I'd walked. Just as I reached my apartment, my phone rang. The screen flashed Grace. I answered. "Ethan." Her voice was urgent. "Freight, where are you? Can you come over? What's wrong? My father's meeting went off the rails today. Several suppliers pulled out at the same time. I'm at the office, and a bunch of shareholders are cornering me at the conference room door asking questions. Get over here." She paused, as if swallowing something bitter. "Stand next to me. Let them see I have a fiancé." Stabilize things. I stood under the street lamp, looking at my own elongated shadow on the pavement. "Grace," I said, "I'm tired today. Might not be convenient." A 2-second silence. Then her voice went shrill. "Tired? You're tired? My world is exploding, and you say you're tired. Ethan, you used to be there for me. You used to be available. What's this now? Now that you've got the ring on me, you don't have to try." "Grace," I don't care. Get here. Half an hour. If you don't bother seeing me again." She hung up. I pocketed my phone and stood there for a while, looking up at the sky bleached by city lights. A ginkgo leaf floated down onto my shoulder. I picked it up, turned it over in my fingers. Golden edges, still green at the center. I let it fall and walked toward the subway. When I reached the Song Group building, Grace was in the lobby, on the phone. She sounded calmer now, smoother. She was doing the polished corporate voice with someone. Probably a shareholder. Mr. Zhang, don't worry. The financing is moving forward. It'll be in place by next month. I completely understand your concerns." When she saw me, she signaled toward the sofa area. "Sit and wait." I sat where she pointed for an hour and a half. She took 6 or 7 calls, met 2 groups. Each time she trotted me out as a backdrop. "This is my fiancé, Ethan. Tech background. He's a data strategy consultant at our firm. Most people sized me up, offered a polite but dismissive smile, and returned to business with her." The last group left at nearly 10. Grace let out a long breath, collapsed onto the sofa, kicked off her heels, and rested bare feet on the cold marble. "Rub my shoulders," she said, eyes closed. I went behind her and pressed my hands into her shoulders. Her muscles were tight as stone. I worked them slowly, and she made a small, contented hum. "What happened today?" I asked. "Why did the suppliers pull out?" Ivy's hand. Her voice was a mix of annoyance and something like reluctant admiration. That crazy woman's been courting my father's suppliers all week. A few smaller ones jumped. The bigger ones are still weighing options. Ivy's not with you to we're together. Yeah, she cut me off. Her tone suddenly irritated. But business is business. Feelings are feelings. She likes me. Her father doesn't like the Song family. He's just waiting to watch us collapse. What's she supposed to do? What about you? My hands paused for a fraction of a second. What are you supposed to do? Grace was quiet. Then she laughed out a short, dismissive sound, and pulled my hands off her shoulders. She rose barefoot and walked to the window. Looking down at the city, Ethan, she said without turning. You don't seriously think I'd fall out with Ivy for you, do you? I stood behind her, watching her reflection in the glass. Beautiful silhouette. Cool eyes, that's not what I meant. Good. She turned back, suddenly light again. Slapped my arm. All right. Thanks for tonight. I'll order delivery. I want something. No. I'll make noodles at home. Your call. She was already looking at her phone. I walked out of the Song group building into the night wind. I stood on the steps, took a deep breath, and exhaled slowly. My pocket buzzed. Vivian, tomorrow noon. Dingshin office. Got something good for you. I replied. Kate at 18 noon the next day. I pushed open the door to Vivian's office. She was at the desk. Spreadsheets fanned out in front of her. She gestured at the chair across from her, and her expression was grim. What's wrong? The Cole Group's cash flow. I dug it up. She slid a report across. Worse than I thought. Ivy's father, Robert Cole, poured nearly $80 million into a real estate project last year. Lost most of it. The Cole Group's available liquid capital is under $20 million now. Not enough to swallow Song's mess. Ivy's out there making noise with suppliers as a bluff. She's trying to trigger Song's collapse and buy the scraps at liquidation price. She's in more of a hurry than we are. Much more. Vivian leaned back and rubbed her nose. But I'd advise against waiting for a full Song collapse. Ivy's moves are already attracting market attention. If a third-party fund smells opportunity, we lose the window, meaning Wednesday, when the money lands. We go public with the acquisition offer. Public. I blinked. I thought we were going dark. Dark's no longer viable. Ivy's already leaked most of Song's financial situation. Articles are written and queued. They're just waiting for the signal. Vivian pulled a sheet from her drawer. How do you think your fiancée would react if she knew her family's position in advance? I stared at the sheet. A draft press release. Song Group plunges into debt crisis. Tech subsidiary's future in jeopardy. I was quiet for a few seconds, then slid it back across the desk. When the funds arrive Wednesday, I want to see her first. See her. Why? Because I want to finish the act. I stood and buttoned my jacket. 2 years of theater. If I'm not in the final scene, I'll feel cheated out of my ticket money. Vivian looked at me. Don't overplay it. I won't. I gave her a smile. I'm a simp. A simp's greatest virtue is that he never bites. Not until the hand reaches into his bowl. Saturday noon. Grace surprised me with a lunch invitation. She rarely initiated, especially on weekends. So when she texted free for lunch, I knew the drill. Either she needed money or she needed a background prop. But the venue made me pause at the French restaurant where we'd had our first date. $300 a head, perched on top of a skyscraper with a killer view. When I arrived, she was already seated. White knit top, loose hair, lighter makeup than usual. Softer. Hey, sit. I sat. The waiter handed menus. She ordered quickly, selecting dishes I apparently liked. She wouldn't actually know what I liked. She just remembered the ones I'd mentioned once. While the appetizer came foie gras, she cut a slice and said, as if offhand, Ethan, do you have any liquid funds available? Here it was. I set down my knife and fork. How much? $600,000. She said it like it was nothing. My annual salary was $38,000. She was asking for 15 years of savings. I need it for a project bridge loan. She continued, 3 months max market rate interest. Help me out on this, and I'll treat you right from now on. I didn't answer. 5 seconds. Then her face shifted. The softness drained away like low tide revealing rocks. Ethan, Grace. I kept my voice level. I don't have 600,000. The softness vanished completely. She set her utensils down, folded her hands on the table, and fixed me with that look. Scrutiny. Impatience. Sharpness ready to cut. You don't have it. 2 years with me. And you can't scrape together 600,000. I make 38 a year. After tax. About 30. Rent's 9. Give me. She cut me off, voice rising. You gave me that money willingly. Don't do the accounting now. Ethan, let me tell you something. If I hadn't agreed to be with you, you'd still be a code monkey in a cubicle. Those wages. That pathetic little savings account. What did you think you'd ever amount to? Nearby tables turned to look. I kept my head down. Said nothing. Say something. Her fingernails wrapped the marble tabletop. I asked you for money. You said no. So why are you here? You think I wanted to eat with you? I asked because my dad's in a bind. Otherwise I wouldn't even think of you. Her voice grew louder, more agitated. Listen to yourself. You're like a tail I can't shake. She was standing now. Purse slapped onto the table. I'm telling you right now. Ethan. If you can't help with this, we don't have a wedding. Get lost. Now. Then she turned and waved across the restaurant. From a corner table, Ivy Cole rose in a sharp black blazer, glass in hand, and walked over slowly. She slid an arm around Grace's waist, whispered something in her ear. Grace didn't pull away. She leaned into her instead. Looking up at Ivy. You're here, she said. I was just dealing with this leech. Ivy patted her back and looked at me. Her eyes carried the amused condescension of someone examining a stray cat at a high society gala. Oh, you're Ethan, she said, voice soft but cutting. Grace mentions you often. Says you're very devoted. Ivy. Don't defend him. Grace turned back to me. Every word a scrape of nails on a chalkboard. Ethan, look at me. See who I actually love. You should have known by now. 2 years that did I ever let you touch me. Kiss me. You think that ring makes you mine. It's a toy. Now get out. Don't make me call security. She finished, and Ivy gave a slow, deliberate clap. The restaurant had gone dead silent. I stood up. In that motion, I towered over Grace by a full head. She flinched half a step back, but I did nothing. Just looked at her. Face schooled into the perfect expression. Wounded, lost, hesitant. Grace, I said, quiet enough that only she could hear. Are you sure you want me to leave? Go. I turned. The instant I turned, my phone started vibrating in my pocket. 3 steps out. It stopped up, then started again. I stopped. Pulled it out. An overseas number. I hit answer and speaker. Mr. Ethan. The voice was Vivian's legal team. It carried clearly through the hushed restaurant. The acquisition agreement has cleared all regulatory approvals. All funds are in place. 67% of Song Holdings equity has been acquired via tender offer. Per the terms, you are now the largest shareholder and de facto controlling party of the Song Group. Additionally, the personal guarantee debts under Mr. George Song's name have been triggered for accelerated maturity. Execution proceedings will commence at 3 p.m. today. Congratulations, Mr. Ethan. The call ended. The restaurant was so quiet I could hear ice melting in a wine glass across the room. I turned back slowly. Grace stood frozen. Her expression had gone from fierce to blank to ashen. Her lips parted, moved soundlessly. Ivy's arm had dropped from her waist. I walked back to the table, picked up my jacket from the back of the chair, and looked down at her. Ms. Song, I said, my tone as mild as if discussing the weather. 9 a.m. tomorrow. New shareholder meeting. Please be on time. I paused and turned to Ms. Cole, you can stop your acquisition plans. The Song Group is mine now. If you're interested, we could talk sometime about those off-balance sheet financing vehicles under your name. Ivy's face went white too. I slung my jacket over my arm and walked toward the exit. As I passed Grace, I spoke in a voice so low only she could hear. The ring's expensive. Don't throw it away. Keep it as a souvenir. I pushed through the restaurant doors. Sunlight hit me square in the face, making me squint. Behind me came the crash of something shattering. And a strangled, choked sound from Grace. I didn't look back. When I walked out of the restaurant, my legs felt weak. I'd rehearsed that moment 100 times, but saying it aloud was different. Adrenaline ebbed, replaced by something else. Not pleasure, but a hollow, deep exhaustion. I leaned against the lobby wall for a moment, waiting for my heart to settle. Then I straightened and walked toward the parking garage. My phone buzzed nonstop. Vivian called 3 times. I didn't answer. She'd ask what happened. I knew what was coming over the next few hours. But first, I needed to breathe. When I hit the main road, I called her back. Ethan, what did you just do? Speakerphone. Do you know that call is already circulating in half a dozen circles? Good. That's the point. I turned into a side street. The faster word spreads, the faster the market reacts. Waiting hurts me. Vivian let out a long, heavy sigh. You're really fine. It's out now. I'll handle the rest. Where are you? Going home. She paused. The Song Group office will be a war zone tomorrow morning. Journalists are already calling my assistant. When I walked into my apartment, I'd already switched my phone to silent, but the screen kept flashing. Wave after wave of WhatsApp messages and missed calls flooding in like a tide. that I laid the phone face down on the coffee table, went to the kitchen, and poured a glass of water. Cold. It went down my throat like a chill all the way to my stomach. I leaned against the counter and looked out at the darkening sky. Inside, my mind was still. The eye of the storm, outside. I knew. It had already exploded, not even 20 minutes later. Grace's call came in. The screen lit up with her name and a photo she'd made me change 3 months ago. Her profile against the sunset. Hair blown back by sea breeze. I'd taken that picture in the Maldives. At the time she said it was okay. I didn't answer. IT rang 43 seconds. Then stopped. Then immediately started again. Then a third. A fourth. A fifth. I flipped the phone face down. The glow from the screen bled through the thin white case, spreading a warm patch of light across the wooden table. I sat on the sofa. Didn't move. Then the text started. Staccato buzzes through the tabletop. I picked the phone up and looked. Grace had sent over 30 WhatsApp messages. All voice notes. The shortest was 2 seconds. The longest, almost a minute. I didn't open any. The top text read, Ethan, answer me. What the hell does new shareholder mean? Acquisition. What did you do to my family? I screenshotted it. Then I went to my contacts and blocked her. I tossed the phone to the other end of the sofa and leaned back into the cushions. On the ceiling, a long thin crack ran from the light fixture to the corner there when I moved in. Never fixed. I stared at it in the fading light. In the dimness, it looked like a tributary to at 6 p.m. Vivian's text came through. Text this time. George Song knows. He smashed a glass in his office at 3. Made a dozen calls asking who's buying. No one's traced it to Dingxin yet. But be ready. He'll come to you tomorrow. Okay. Also, I just heard from Ivy's camp. She called Grace. Don't know details, but apparently she ended it. Cold. I stared at the message. My thumb hovered for a moment. Then I typed. Got it. I felt no satisfaction. Ivy leaving Grace was inevitable the moment I moved. How much genuine feeling existed between them? I'd never know. But Ivy was Robert Cole's daughter. Cole Group interests came first. Once the Song family was a dead asset. Whatever Ivy felt for Grace could last exactly 1 phone call's worth of politeness. At 9 p.m. Rain started. Fat drops hammered the window pane. I stood and looked out. Streetlights polished the wet asphalt into a mirror. An occasional car passed. Tires hissing through puddles. My phone lit up again. An unknown number. I hesitated. Then answered. Ethan. Grace's voice exploded from the speaker. Raw as sandpaper. Half sobbing. Half screaming. You blocked me. You blocked me. Who do you think you are? That call at the restaurant. What the hell was that? Where are you now? Come out. Come out right now. She was incoherent. Words tumbling over each other. Punctuated by sniffles and the crash of something knocked over. In the background, I heard a woman's voice her mother trying to calm her. Grace. I kept my voice flat as still water. This isn't the time to fight. Get some rest tonight. Be at the office at 9 tomorrow. If you have a lawyer, bring them lawyer. What lawyer? Ethan. Who do you think you are? That's my family's company. What do you mean acquisition? You make 38,000. Acquisition of what? Her voice climbed toward hysteria. You found someone, didn't you? You're working with. She stopped abruptly. Her tone dropped. Sharp and suspicious. Ethan. Who are you? Silence. Only her ragged breathing through the speaker. You never asked who I was. I said. 2 years. You never asked. I hung up. Blocked the number. Rain kept falling. I leaned against the windowsill, watching the blurred city through the downpour. Office lights in the distance dissolved into orange halos. Flames scattered across water. That night, I slept deeply. Surprisingly deeply. Maybe for the first time in 2 years. My eyes truly closed. Because everything that needed setting up was set. Everything I'd held in, swallowed, hidden at IT had all poured out in that one restaurant turn. All that remained was to wait for morning. For the last domino to fall. I woke naturally at 7 a.m. The rain had stopped. The sky was a pale, washed blue. I showered, dressed, ate a simple breakfast, and drove to Song Group headquarters. The building stood in the city's tech district. 27 glass and steel floors, with giant blue letters on the roof reading Song Group. Visible from miles away. I'd come here many times, always with my head down, carrying takeout or packages, entering through the side entrance near the front desk. Always identified as Grace Song's fiancée. Today I parked in the temporary space in front of the main entrance. Dark gray suit. I pushed through the revolving doors. The receptionist saw me. She blinked, then went pale. Mr. Ethan. Good morning. Morning. I nodded. Is the meeting room ready? Yes. 9th floor. Mr. Song and the others are already there. I walked to the elevator. In the brushed metal of the doors, I caught my own reflection. Pale, but steady. No smile. The elevator rose. The number hit 9 with a ding. In the hallway stood several people. George Song waited outside the conference room in a wrinkled dark blue shirt, hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot. When he saw me step out of the elevator, he took a step forward, then stopped. Beside him were his legal director and 2 middle-aged men I didn't recognize. Consultants. Probably. Grace wasn't there. Ethan. George's voice was raspy, low with forced control, but his words trembled at the edges. Come in. We need to talk. The conference room was enormous, an oval table for 20. George sat beside the head seat. The head seat was empty. For me. He gestured to it. Sit. I sat. The others filed in on both sides. The air was tense, the AC humming too cold against my neck. George's gaze stayed on me like 2 dull blades. Explain, he said. How did you do this that you've already looked it up? I assume. I said. Dingshin Consulting's holding company is incorporated offshore. Layered structure. Compliant tender offer. All approvals and standard time frames. That's not what I asked. George leaned forward, hands flat on the table, knuckles white. I'm asking who you are. You got close to my daughter. Was it all planned from the start? I looked at him. Older. So much older than the vibrant man in the photo from 20 years ago. Crow's feet carved deep. Silver overtaking black at his temples. But his eyes were still sharp. Still wily. The instincts of an old fox. Even now. 20 years ago. I said. Song Technology had 2 founders. One was you. The other was Henry Chun. George's pupils contracted sharply. He jerked back like he'd been shoved. Henry Chun. He repeated, his lips trembling. You're Henry's son. My name is Ethan Chun. My mother's surname. When you and my father founded Song Technology, I was 6. The partnership agreement you signed said 50-50 equity. I didn't. You presented him with a forged equity transfer agreement. Told him it was just procedural. He signed it. Then you pushed him out. He got nothing. He moved us out of the villa you'd bought together. Silence. The legal director had frozen mid-page turn. The night my father left, I stood in the doorway and heard him on the phone with you. He said, George, what do you take me for? I've remembered that sentence for 20 years. I pulled a yellowed piece of paper from my bag, laid it flat, and slid it across. Original partnership agreement copy. Your signature. Beside it, my father's note. Ethan. Remember, what doesn't belong to him, someone will take back. George stared at the paper. The color drained from his face. His hands began to shake. His lips moved. But no words came. You've been planning this since your daughter appeared at my company's annual gala 2 years ago. But she wasn't my choice. She was Ivy Cole's choice. The Coles sent her after a harmless target to stabilize the Song Group's image and keep a useful card on the table. I just went along. George's head snapped up. The Coles, you didn't know? I asked. About your daughter and Ivy Cole. His face went white. He turned to his legal director, who looked away. Then to the 2 consultants. Both avoided his eyes. Mr. Song. I pushed the heaviest stone onto the table. Your daughter's spending over the past 2 years. The assets you moved off book. The external financing you've been desperately chasing for 3 months. All in my data scope. I knew last month about your plan to transfer core assets to an offshore shell before the Song Group collapses completely. George shot up, chair scraping marble with a screech. He leaned over the table, red-eyed, fists planted. You've been monitoring me. Illegal intrusion. No intrusion. Your daughter logged into her company email on my phone once. After that, your internal emails automatically forwarded to a backup address. Password. Her birthday. She never changed it. George's chest heaved. He half-turned like he might leave. Might throw something. Then he collapsed back into his chair, hands clawing at his hair. A low animal groan escaping his throat. I watched him. Calm. The conference room door burst open. Grace stood at the threshold. Her white shirt was wrinkled. Jeans plain. Hair in a messy ponytail. No makeup. Her eyes were swollen. She saw me in the head seat and flinched. Dad. Her voice cracked. A thin wire about to snap. George didn't look up. Grace walked in slowly, step by step, to the table. She looked down at the yellowed partnership paper, her gaze landing on the name Henry Chun. After a long moment, she straightened and turned to me. Her lips quivered. Tears welled, but didn't fall. She held them back. So all this time, she said, voice shredded. Everything you did for me. All of it was fake. I didn't answer. Ethan. Say something. Her voice broke. Tears spilled over. But she bit her lip and held back the sobs. You brought me breakfast for a year. You picked up medicine in the rain at midnight. You saved for 6 months for that ring. All of it. All of it. The breakfast was real. I said. The medicine was real. The ring was real. She froze. But I didn't do it because I loved you. I watched her. My voice was steady. Only I knew the ache in my chest, that the phantom pain of the real. Foolish Ethan from 2 years ago. I did it because I needed you to trust me. To think of me as that pathetic simp you couldn't shake. To be so careless around me that you'd text Ivy openly. Spend my money without guilt. Use me without shame. If you hadn't dropped your guard, I couldn't have gotten what I needed. Grace stepped back, bumping into a chair, steadying herself against its back. The look in her eyes changed from fury and hurt to something deeper. She finally understood. All her arrogance, her casual cruelty, her disdain that she'd believed she was leading the idiot around on a leash. She'd never realized the idiot was using her to rope herself. The door opened again. A woman in a black business suit entered, carrying a stack of papers. Vivian's lawyer. She nodded at me, placed the folder on the table. Mr. Ethan, Mr. Song. We can begin the liquidation proceedings. Grace's shoulders crumpled. She turned and walked to the door. At the threshold, she paused, but didn't look back. And said in a voice barely above a whisper, Ethan, I threw the ring away. I don't care. I said. She left. Her heels clicked further and further down the hall. Swallowed by the closing elevator. I turned back to George. He slowly straightened in his chair, face worn like sandpaper. He reached for the yellowed paper and turned it over. On the back, in my father's ballpoint pen, George Song. You can push me out today. My son will come back for it in 20 years. George's fingers traced the words. He gave a bitter laugh, barely audible. Henry, still just as stubborn. Then he sank back, eyes closed, a hollow shell. The others sat in silence, waiting for me. I picked up a pen and signed the liquidation documents. Outside, sunlight filtered through the blinds, cutting parallel stripes across the long table. Dust motes drifted in the light. Slow, silent. The liquidation meeting lasted 4 hours. Financial records covered the table. Vivian's team of accountants went page by page, flagging problems, listing debts, outlining asset disposition plans. I sat in the head seat, mostly listening, occasionally asking for key numbers. George said nothing the entire time. He leaned back with his eyes closed. Asleep or pretending to sleep. When his daughter called once, he glanced at the screen, silenced it, and turned the phone face down. Halfway through, the PR manager knocked and handed me a file. Apologetic. Mr. Ethan. Journalists outside. Several of them. They're asking for interviews. Issue a statement. I said. Vivian's team drafted one yesterday. Standard procedure. Just note the equity change. No specifics. No response to other questions. The PR manager nodded and left. The lunch break. I stayed in the conference room. Someone brought me a sandwich. I ate while reviewing the morning's findings. The Song Group's books were worse than I'd estimated. The core patent portfolio had been collateralized 3 times over. Most of the tech team had left. Half the management were George's relatives. Drawing salaries. Doing nothing. I circled a few names on the personnel list and handed it to the lawyer. These. Start termination proceedings. Standard severance. No more. No less. The lawyer glanced at it, expression flickering. First one is Mr. Song's nephew. Second is his wife's brother. Standard terms. I said at 2 p.m. Grace came back that she'd changed into a black skirt suit. Fresh hair. Makeup to cover the swollen eyes. She walked in straight-backed, wearing a mask of composure, but the coffee cup in her hand was shaking. Brown liquid splashed over the rim onto her fingers. She didn't seem to notice that I'm here for my personal things. She said, my office is on 16. Fine. I glanced up. Someone can go with you. I'll go alone. Her voice had a testy edge. Do I need approval now just to step into the building? I didn't respond. An administrative assistant stood. Ms. Song, I'll escort you. Grace looked at the assistant, her mouth twitching. She said nothing, turned, and walked out. 15 minutes later, she returned with a cardboard box, notebooks, a mug, a cashmere scarf draped over the edge. She placed the box on a chair in the corner, then stood in front of me, not moving. Ethan. I looked up from the documents. Oh, you still have my text with Ivy. I said nothing. She took a breath. A long, shaky one, as if steeling herself. Did you show them to anyone? No. But some of your senior management saw them through other channels. Her face went pale again. She opened her mouth, closed it, then turned toward the door. 2 steps out. She stopped. Dad, she said, still facing away. The offshore asset transfers. Your father is being referred for legal proceedings, I said, on charges of asset misappropriation. That's separate from you. You're free to go. She stood frozen. Her shoulders trembled. She raised a hand quickly to her face, then straightened and kept walking at the door. She turned back. Her eyes were red, but the tears had been pushed down, a faint pink rim around them. Her jaw was tight, her whole body taut. Ethan. The words came out like she'd used her last string. You win. Then she was gone. The cardboard box stayed in the corner. A corner of the cashmere scarf hung over its edge, grayish-white, pilling at the trim. She'd bought it 2 years ago, thought it too dull, and left it draped over her office chair like a cushion. I looked away and went back to the documents. T 4.30. The agenda was complete. George signed the final paper with a trembling hand, his pen skidding twice across the page. He threw the pen on the table, stood, and looked at me. His lips moved. Henry had a good son. He shuffled out, shirt tail untucked, no one paying him any mind. After the room emptied, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down. Reporters clustered at the front entrance, cameras aimed at the doors. A white sedan emerged from the underground garage. Grace's car. It was stopped at the gate for 2 seconds, her window lowered. A brief word to the guard, and the barrier rose. The car merged into traffic. I watched until it became indistinguishable among the other white specks. My phone buzzed. Vivian, free tonight. Dinner. I replied. Yes. She picked a quiet Japanese place by the river. Floor-to-ceiling windows faced the bridge. When I arrived, she was already there. A bottle of sake and 2 cups on the table. She gestured me over. Long day. She clinked her cup against mine. You're the one who should say that. I Saturday took a sip. The sake was warm, sliding down to bloom in my stomach. How was your side? Manageable. George didn't make a scene. He accepted it. Just like that. He always knew this day would come. I set the cup down, watching the river lights below. He knew what he did. He just didn't expect the one coming for the bill to be me. Vivian was quiet. Then she laughed softly. So is this more about revenge for your father, or about what your fiancé did to you? I looked at her eyes, deep brown, warm under the light. She was asking lightly, with a friend's casualness, but she was waiting for a real answer. Both, I said, when I first started pursuing her. It was genuine. No revenge. She was beautiful, brilliant, shining on stage. I wanted to be with her. And then I found out about her and Ivy. Then I found out who Ivy was. Then I called my mother, and she told me about my father. I sipped again. After that, everything changed. When I brought her breakfast, I was thinking about the deed to her apartment hidden in her father's study. When she yelled at me, I was thinking about the hotel she'd visited with Ivy the day before. 2 years. I remembered everything, calculated everything. Vivian looked at me for a few seconds. Doesn't hating someone for 2 years exhaust you? Yes. I leaned back. But it's easier than loving someone for 2 years. When you love someone and they never answered, every morning you wake up not knowing why you're still there. When you hate someone, at least you know what you're aiming at. Vivian refilled my cup. Then her own. What's next for Song Group? She asked. Shifting gears, break it apart and rebuild. Keep the tech division. Restructure the supply chain. New management team. The company's core isn't bad. George just ran it into the ground. Once I separate out the liabilities, the underlying assets still have value. What will the new company be called? I held my cup, thinking. Through the window, the river wind carried early autumn's cool moisture. Chunlight. I said. Vivian looked up, a knowing smile touching her eyes. Henry Chin's Chun. I raised my cup to Chunlight. She clinked hers against mine. A clean, short chime that echoed and faded. We both drank. Then Vivian remembered something and pulled an envelope from her bag. By the way, someone came to Dingxin today. Asked to see you. Who? A woman named Grace Song. She said she's George Song's daughter. Half-sistered. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single note card. A phone number and neat handwriting. Mr. Ethan, I have complete records of George Song's asset transfers. Pick the time and place. Please give me a chance. I turned the card over. Blank. Grace Song. I repeated. George has another daughter, out of wedlock. Apparently, 5 years older than Grace. No official position at the company, but she's managed some of George's private accounts. Vivian said. I checked. This Grace Song has an extremely poor relationship with Grace and her mother. Her mother was abandoned by George, raised her alone. She's been collecting evidence on him since she joined Song Group. I set the card down and looked at the river boats passing below. Their neon reflections rippled and broke on the water. Set it up for tomorrow afternoon. Acting Sheen. Vivian nodded and texted her assistant. I picked up my cup again, draining the warm sake. Outside, the autumn wind grew cooler. Plane trees along the river had begun shedding their golden red leaves lit by street lights. I remembered something. 2 years ago today, I first saw Grace at the company gala. Red dress, shimmering eyeshadow, a smile that curved her eyes. Among all those people, she'd looked at me and said, "Mr. Ethan has excellent professional insight." I'd thought it was the best night of my life. Now I knew it was the beginning of my wakefulness. I set the cup down. "Let's go. One more battle tomorrow." Vivian stood, grabbed her coat. We walked out of the restaurant into the river breeze, carrying the scent of algae and earth. Above, traffic streamed across the bridge, lights flowing across steel cables like a river of stars. I looked up for a moment. Then I walked to my car and drove back to the old, quiet street I'd lived on for 2 years. The next afternoon, Dingxin Consulting. Grace Song arrived 15 minutes early. The front desk announced her while I was reviewing supplier contracts in Vivian's office. I set the file aside and told them to send her in. The moment she walked in, I caught my breath. She had 3 parts of Grace's face. Same brow, same cheekbones, but the spirit was different. Grace was sharp-edged, unsheathed. This woman was still, contained, gray knit and black trousers, hair in a low bun, no makeup. But her eyes held an older, steadier clarity. She sat across from me and slid a thick folder onto the desk. Mr. Ethan, I'm Grace Song. The voice was even, touched with a slight southern softness. These are details of $1.2 billion in assets George Song transferred through 13 related companies over the past 3 years, plus full documentation on 3 offshore shells he currently controls. I flipped through. Every page had corresponding bank statements and incorporation filings. The chain of evidence was solid, even better than what I'd gathered myself. "How long have you been collecting this?" I asked. "0.5 years. Her tone was flat, like she was describing the weather. "From my first day at Song Group. My mother never had a good day after he left her. Before she died, she told me one thing. Your father owes us. Go collect it yourself." She placed a USB drive on top of the folder. Digital copy. All original records. Recordings. Screenshots. If you're pursuing legal action, this is the evidence you need. I looked at her. Her expression was calm, not twisted by resentment. Not alight with revenge. Just a heavy, accumulated exhaustion. "What do you want in return?" I asked. She paused. "Then, I want a position at the new company." I raised an eyebrow. Chinlight Technologies. She met my eyes. Steady and direct. "I know every Song Group business line, every supplier and client relationship, every tech team member. In the 5 years I've been collecting evidence, I've also been learning how to run a business. I can help you strip out the core assets faster than any outside hire. One condition: fair treatment. Don't hold my blood against me." The office was quiet for a few seconds. Vivian listened from the side, sipping her coffee, saying nothing. "Ms. Song," I said, "you're handing over evidence that would convict your own father. And then asking to stay at the company he built. Does that not sit oddly with you?" Grace Song smiled. It was a faint smile, a slight twitch at the corner of her mouth, with a touch of bitterness. "Mr. Ethan, Song Technology was founded by my father and Henry Chun. That was before Grace was born. Before all the mess with my mother. Back then my father was a young man with ideals that he wanted to build a good company. He changed, but the company itself hasn't changed. The technology, the patents, the employees, they didn't do anything wrong. I want to get it back on track. As for my father, he can face the law." She stood and extended her hand. "Mr. Ethan, if you'll trust me, I'll prove my value." I looked at her hand. Long fingers, calluses on the pads. Not like Grace's manicured, untouched hands. These were hands that had done work. I shook. "Welcome to Chinlight Technologies," I said. "Start tomorrow. Report to Vivian." She nodded, turned, and walked out. Her heels clicked down the hallway in a steady rhythm, fading as the door closed. Vivian stood and pulled the blinds halfway. "This Grace Song is far more interesting than your ex-fiancée. Can she be trusted?" I checked. Her evidence is authentic, and her relationship with Grace and her mother is indeed hostile. Grace's mother publicly humiliated her mother years ago. Cost her job. That grudge has run almost 20 years. Vivian turned to me. "She's helping you against George and the Song women. On that front, she's more determined than you." I reopened the folder and read page by page. George's asset transfers weren't even sophisticated. Fake transactions, inflated procurement, offshore profits. But he'd gotten away with it for years because no one dared audit him. I stopped at the last page. A transcript of a call between George and an offshore account manager, discussing moving core patents to a new shell before Song Group's bankruptcy. Those assets will be safe once the dust settles. I closed the folder and rubbed my eyes. Vivian, I said, I want to make this public. She looked at me. You sure? Once it's public, George Song has no comeback. Criminal charges are certain that he never should have had a comeback. I said, he didn't leave my father a way out either. She paused. Then, fine, I'll handle it. Within 3 days, all materials will go to the Commercial Crimes Division through proper channels. And Light Technologies will announce its public listing simultaneously. Thank you. Don't thank me. Vivian raised her coffee cup. Thank your father. He raised a good son. That night, I sat in my apartment in the dark. I opened my photo gallery to old pictures of breakfast plates I'd made for Grace. Candid shots of her trying on the ring. Beach photos from the Maldives. I swiped through them all. Then I hit select, all, and delete. The phone screen went dark, reflecting my own face. From my wallet, I pulled the yellowed photo of Henry Chun holding me as an infant. Laughing so hard his eyes disappeared, his face buried in my soft baby belly. In the picture, tiny Ethan grabbed his hair with chubby fists. Dad, I whispered. I got the company back. The photo didn't answer. Moonlight fell through the window, silvering the edge of the old print. I sat until my legs went numb. Then I stood, washed my face, and looked in the mirror. There was a faint scar above my brow. From falling off the sofa at 3. My father had carried me to the hospital, fell and scraped his knee on the way, but still got me to the ER before treating himself. My mother told me that. She said, your father loved you like crazy. When you had a fever, he'd stay up all night wiping you down. Your first day of kindergarten, he stood outside the fence watching you all morning. She also said, the night your father left, his last phone call was to George Song. No one knew what was said in that call. But later, when the police visited George's office, there was an untouched cup of cold tea on his desk that I don't know if my father begged. I only know that when he died, he had nothing. No company, no money except a 6-year-old son and a note written on the back of a partnership agreement. I turned off the bathroom light. Lying in bed, I stared at the crack in the ceiling, from the light fixture to the corner. Then I closed my eyes. 3 days. Then everything would end. Those 3 days moved slowly. So slowly that sometimes I'd lose track of time at my desk. Look up and realize the sky had gone dark. Grace Song moved fast. On her first day, she produced a detailed inventory of core assets, sifting Song Group's truly valuable tech patents and client relationships from the junk. Vivian's legal team simultaneously pushed the evidence submission. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, the formal notice came. George Song was under investigation for multiple charges. Embezzlement, fraudulent transactions, asset transfer. His accounts, properties, and vehicles were frozen immediately when the news came through. I was in the office with Grace, reviewing a supplier restructuring plan. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then looked up. They just took him in. At the office entrance. I nodded and went back to the document. She said nothing more. Her voice stayed steady as we continued, but her pen pressed hard against the paper, leaving a small, dark ink dot at 6 p.m. I was packing up when the front desk called. Mr. Ethan, there's a woman downstairs. She says she's Grace's mother. She'd like to see you. I paused, coat in hand. Send her up. 5 minutes later, Grace's mother walked in. She wore a deep purple down vest over a plaid dress, her hair still perfectly curled. Her makeup was smudged, but the bones were still there. A well-maintained middle-aged woman with fine features, but her eyes were swollen, and her lips were cracked. Ethan. She walked to my desk, wringing her designer bag strap. I'm begging you. I neither sat nor gestured for her to sit. I stood behind my desk and watched her quietly. Grace's father was taken. All accounts frozen. The house is sealed. Even Grace's apartment, if they traced the funds to him. So it's frozen too. We have nowhere to go. Tears started streaming down her face. She wiped them with the back of her hand, smearing mascara into black streaks. Ethan, I know you hate us, but Grace was with you for 2 years. She at least, ma'am. I cut her off. What do you want me to do? She opened her mouth, thrown by the bluntness, then forced herself to continue. Give Grace a job. That's all. She did marketing at Song Group for years. She has experience. Your new company must need people, even the lowest position. Just something to keep her afloat. She's falling apart. Locked herself in a motel room crying. I'm afraid I looked at this woman sobbing before me. 2 years ago, When she first met me, she was sitting on a leather sofa in the Song Villa. She'd looked me up and down 3 times, then told Grace, "Your taste has really dropped." Her fingers had 3 jade rings. She spoke with her pinky raised up. "Ma'am," I said, "the Song Group currently has no vacancies. Chun Light Technologies is in the middle of restructuring. Hiring hasn't begun." Her tears stopped. She stared at me, lips trembling. Her expression shifted from pleading to twisted, venomous fury. "Ethan, you're heartless. Grace gave you 2 years. She spent time on you. She did things for you. And you won't help her at all. She's a young woman. She's lost everything. You can't do one thing." "What did she ever spend on me?" I asked. "Ma'am, your daughter had an affair with Ivy Cole. She spent my money, used me for errands, humiliated me in front of hundreds of people. In 2 years, she never once washed my clothes, never cooked me a meal, never visited me once when I was sick. The only thing she ever gave me was permission to be her doormat. So no, I don't remember any debt of gratitude." Her face flushed scarlet. She stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish on dry land. Then she stomped, turned, and ran out. Her heels clattered down the hall until the elevator swallowed them. I put my coat on, turned off the office light, and walked out. In the lobby, I saw Grace. She stood in the seating area near the corner, in an old hoodie and jeans, hair in a messy ponytail, no makeup. She looked thin. The hoodie hung loose, cheekbones sharp, chin like a blade. She saw me step out of the elevator and took 2 steps forward, then stopped. I walked toward the main exit. As I passed her, she spoke. Voice hoarse, barely audible. "Ethan." I stopped. "Did my mom come see you?" Her voice was small. "Don't listen to her. I didn't send her. I saw her on the street and followed her in. I'm not here to ask for anything." I turned. She stood with her head down, hands in her hoodie pockets, shoulders hunched. The receptionist was glancing over. Grace noticed and retreated half a step into the shadow of the sofa. "Ethan." She said my name again. This time she looked up. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying. She just looked at me for a long time, then said in a very, very quiet voice, "Was I really awful that I didn't answer?" She laughed, a faint, bitter one. The corner of her mouth twisting in self-mockery. "Never mind. I know." She pulled the hood over her head and turned away from me. "You can go. I lied about the ring. I didn't throw it away. It's in my nightstand. You can have it back. Keep it as a souvenir." She walked to the doors, pushed through, and disappeared into the November wind. I stood in the lobby for a long time. The security guard asked, "Mr. Ethan, is everything okay?" I looked out at the cold night, the faint sweetness of roasted chestnuts drifting from a street vendor. Grace's figure had shrunk into a small, dark shape, turning the corner until it was gone. I stood there, the lobby lights pooling at my feet. I remembered that summer. Red dress, stage spotlight. Her smile had lit up the world. Mr. Ethan. The receptionist's voice was tentative. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," I said. "Close the door. It's windy." I walked out without driving. I headed north along the sidewalk. A convenience store, a fruit shop, a closed flower stand with plastic buckets of unsold white lilies, their petals curling brown at the edges. I stopped for a moment. I used to put flowers in her office every month. Lilies, roses. She never asked who left them, never thanked me, until Ivy commented once that lilies were too plain. The next day, Grace messaged me, "Stop buying white flowers. They look like funeral arrangements." I stood there for about 2 minutes, then kept walking. 20 minutes later, I stopped at a street stall selling fish balls and radish stew, a small cart with 2 stainless steel pots bubbling away. The vendor was a woman in her 50s in a blue apron. She smiled. "Want some, young man? It's cold out. Warm yourself up." "Yeah." "Radish, fish balls, tofu, extra broth." She handed me a bowl, sprinkled green onion on top. The warmth from the paper bowl burned my palm. I sat on a small folding stool and took a bite. The radish was soft, the broth had soaked all the way through. This was where I'd first brought Grace. Early in my pursuit, she said she hadn't eaten dinner. I only had $30 on me, so I brought her here. She wore her expensive dress and heels, knees awkwardly folded on the tiny stool. She took 1 bite of radish, frowned, and said, "Street food's unhygienic." She left after 2 bites. I stayed and finished her portion, then threw both bowls away together. Back then, what was I thinking? I'll work hard. I'll take her somewhere nice one day. 2 years later, I had the money, but she no longer deserved it. I finished, put the bowl in the return bin, and paid. "Come again." The vendor called. I smiled, turned, and walked toward home. 2 steps in, I stopped. Grace stood across the street under an old locust tree. She hadn't gone far. She'd been walking up and down this street. Hood up, head down, hands in her pockets. A small, gray shadow in the streetlight. She hadn't noticed me. She walked quickly, like she was fleeing something but didn't know where to go. As she passed the stew cart, she glanced sideways at the vendor and the two people eating, then picked up her pace. Grace, she froze, slowly. She turned. The streetlight caught half her face under the hood. A jumble of panic, shame, a flicker of unguarded hope, and the instinct to curl into invisibility. Ethan. Her voice was tiny. You live around here? Yeah. She looked at her feet. A puddle pooled on the asphalt, reflecting streetlight. Her toes hovered at its edge, after a long time, as if summoning every ounce of courage. She raised her head. Ethan, are you hungry? She asked. I'll buy you dinner. There's a noodle place up ahead. It's still open. Her voice shook. Each word seemed to drag itself out. She was gripping the fabric of her hoodie pocket, her knuckles white. I knew what she feared. She feared rejection. She'd never offered to buy me anything. Never asked if I was hungry. I looked at her face. Haggard, bare, stripped of all polish. Strangely familiar and completely new. I'd known her for 2 years. This was the first time she'd ever stood in front of me without armor. Okay, I said. The noodle shop was small. Fluorescent lights. Plastic tables. Grace stood at the counter for a long time before saying, 1 wonton soup. I ordered noodles with a fried egg. The owner's wife took the order and disappeared into the kitchen. The shop was empty except for us. A ceiling fan hummed overhead, stirring air that smelled of peanut sauce and vinegar. We sat at a small table by the wall. Plastic tablecloth with faded floral patterns. A black scorch mark from a cigarette. Grace pulled her hood down, revealing messy hair. She tried to smooth it, then gave up. I've never been here. She said. I have. A lot. I said. When I didn't feel like cooking, I'd get the noodles. Fried egg on top. She was quiet. From the kitchen came the clatter of wok and spatula. Ethan. She traced a peeling corner of the tablecloth with her finger. Why did you never bring me to places like this? Because you wouldn't come. You thought it was dirty. Her finger stopped. She looked up. Her eyes were reddening, but she held the tears in. After a long moment, she said, in a very small voice, was I really that awful? Awful. I said. She blinked, not expecting the bluntness. Then she tried to laugh. Couldn't, and settled into a bitter, resigned expression. You won't even say not that bad. You asked for the truth. I'm giving it. I pushed the vinegar dish toward her. You don't need me to placate you. You need someone to tell you the truth. She looked at the vinegar. The wonton soup arrived. White porcelain bowl. Seaweed and dried shrimp floating on top. Scallions scattered across the surface. She took the spoon, scooped up some broth, blew on it, and drank carefully. Then she set the spoon down. You know why I was with Ivy. She said. I looked at her. Because she never placated me. Grace gave a bitter smile. She was more aloof than I was. She never brought me breakfast. Never bought me things. Never hovered. But she'd say you look good today, and I'd be happy for days. I used to think guys like you. Guys who'd do anything were boring. She stirred her wontons. Now I think you're kind of scary. Scary. You held out 2 years. 2 years of being scolded. Used. Publicly humiliated. And never cracked. You brought me breakfast while I was texting someone else. Ethan, you're a stone-cold operator. I didn't reply. I took a bite of my noodles. The peanut sauce bloomed on my tongue. Salty and rich. Grace suddenly laughed. A faint, worn-out laugh. Like a deep fatigue finally surfacing. I dreamed about you all night. She said. The first time we met at the gala. You asked that question, and I memorized your name. That night, I looked you up. Thought you were decent looking. Thought, this guy should be easy. She stopped. Steam rose from her soup, curling upward in the dim light. Ethan, do you hate me? I put my chopsticks down. My bowl was half finished. Yes, I said. Her eyelashes fluttered. She didn't cry, but her face crumpled, like something inside was caving in. She dropped her head into her hands, shoulders shaking silently. I sat across from her. But I came to this dinner. I continued. Not to keep hating you. She lifted her face. Red-eyed, red-nosed, looking raw and ridiculous. Her lips parted. What you owe me. You don't have to repay. What your father owes mine. The law will handle. What you owe yourself that you can pay back slowly. Find a real job. Live properly. Don't count on anyone to catch you again. Your mother, Ivy, your father. None of them can be relied on. You know that now. Her tears finally fell one after another into the wonton broth, creating tiny ripples. She didn't wipe them, just sat there, letting them fall. A long taut string finally snapping. The owner's wife came out to wipe a neighboring table. She saw us, said nothing, silently cleared the empty bowls. I stood and put a $50 bill on the table. Ma'am. Together. Keep the change. Then I looked down at Grace. The rest of the road, I said, is yours to walk. Don't look back. I pushed the door open and walked into the night air. As the door swung shut, she called my name. I didn't look back. The shop's lights spilled across the wet asphalt in a warm yellow pool. I walked through it and out of it, leaving her voice behind. When I'd gone far enough, I stopped and looked back. From 2 blocks away, the noodle shop's red and white sign glowed like a small dropped button in the dark. I turned and kept walking home. This time, I didn't stop. 6 months later, it was spring. The launch of Chun Light Technologies took place at the City Convention Center. April wind carried the scent of grass and blossoms. The glass curtain wall sparkled in the sun. I stood on stage for the ribbon cutting, with 200 guests, partners, suppliers, journalists, and a row of employees in matching uniforms. Most were familiar faces from the original Song Technology Tech team. Grace Song sat in the front row corner in a tailored gray blazer, checking her schedule on her phone. In 6 months, she'd become the company's most effective operations VP, streamlining the chaotic supply chain into near-perfect order. She occasionally looked up at me, nodded briefly, and returned to work. After the ribbon cutting, Vivian gave a speech on behalf of the Overseas Investment Group. Black suit, sharp and clean, covering the financing process, the tech outlook. The audience listened attentively. She passed me after and whispered, "Did I sound rehearsed enough? Better than I would have." She rolled her eyes, but the corner of her mouth lifted. The evening reception was at the hotel next door. Champagne flowed. I made a circuit of the room, shaking hands, making small talk. By the time I broke free, it was nearly 9 p.m. I stepped onto the terrace with half a glass of champagne. Night wind hit my face, knocking my tie askew. The convention center lights blazed behind me. In the distance, the city skyline spread out at the same glittering vista I'd seen from the revolving restaurant 2 years ago, except then, I was sitting next to Grace, my chest full of unspoken secrets. Now I stood alone, chest hollowed, wind filling the emptiness. Footsteps clicked across the marble behind me. Standing out here, all alone, Vivian walked up with a glass of red wine, leaned against the railing beside me, and looked at the city. Aren't you supposed to be inside? I asked. Am I supposed to be anywhere I don't want to be? She raised her glass. How are you feeling? You seem not quite excited. Fine. Everything's done. Everything's done. She repeated, then looked at me with quiet warmth in her eyes. And the things that aren't done? Anything you want to do. I blinked. She laughed and tapped her glass against mine. For example, ever thought about watching The View with someone else? Vivian, is that an offer? She raised an eyebrow. It's me telling you you're slow. 6 months of materials. Late nights. Mr. Ethan this. Mr. Ethan that. And not a word from you. I looked at her. The night wind lifted a strand of hair across her face. She tucked it behind her ear. Simple and natural. The terrace light traced her profile, her eyelashes casting long shadows. Vivian, I said, are you asking me to dinner? Yes. She smiled. Not street food. Not noodles. I booked a decent French place. Next weekend. If you're free. Say yes. If you're busy. Cancel. I looked down at my champagne. Bubbles rising in the glass, catching the light like scattered stars. Yes. I said, next weekend. I'll be there. She nodded, satisfied, and turned to go back inside. At the door, she paused and looked over her shoulder. By the way, that exhibition you wanted for your father's work. I talked to the city gallery. They'll give you a space. The old photos and design sketches that you could put together a show. If you want, I can help. My fingers tightened on the glass. How did you know about that? Grace Song told me. Vivian smiled. She said there's an old folder in your desk with your father's name on it. She saw it once, didn't open it, but she remembered. A pause. Don't mention it to her, though. She'd be embarrassed. I told you. I stood in silence for a moment. Thank you. She waved. Save it for the French place. Order the most expensive thing. She slipped inside. The terrace fell quiet again to only the distant hum of the city beyond. I turned back to the railing and drained the last of my champagne. Spring wind blew in from the river, damp and fresh. 6 months ago, I walked out of that noodle shop thinking I'd never open my heart to anyone again. Hate hardens a man. But Vivian had been different. On my side from the start. Nothing false. Nothing calculated. She'd helped me do something I couldn't have done alone. And she'd never once said no. I looked into the distance. Thinking about what to wear next weekend, I pulled out my phone and opened the photo of the old picture. Henry Chun holding 6-year-old Ethan in front of a factory building. The sky was blue, the clouds white. He was laughing like an idiot. Dad, I whispered. I got it back, and I renamed it. Chun Light. A pause. And I think I met someone good. The photo didn't answer, but the river wind blew and cool, carrying the distant hum of a fairy whistle and the smell of damp earth. I put my phone away, pushed the terrace door open, and walked back inside. The ballroom was bright, warm with chatter and clinking glasses. Vivian was in the corner with a group of suppliers. She saw me and gave a small nod. I started walking toward her. Halfway there, my phone buzzed. I glanced down. A text from an unknown number. No name. Ethan, I found a job. Small company. Office assistant. It's okay. Congrats on Chun Light. Grace. I read it for a few seconds. Then I put the phone away and kept walking toward Vivian. The spring wind from the terrace drifted in, flickering the candle flames on the tables. When I sat down, Vivian handed me a fresh glass and said with a smile, "Took you long enough." I took the glass and clinked it against hers. A clean, clear ring. Outside, the city lights stretched to the horizon. April had come. Spring was finally here.